The storm raged outside, rain hammering against the windows as I sat on the couch, staring at the man I had once believed to be my partner. Adrian, my husband of 6 years, sat across from me, his expression unreadable, his fingers drumming anxiously on the armrest of his chair. The tension between us had been building for months, a slow-burning fire that neither of us had the courage to extinguish. "I don't understand why this is such a big deal to you," he finally said, his voice edged with frustration. I let out a bitter laugh. "You don't understand? You really don't." I shook my head, gripping the arms of my chair to keep myself from launching at him. "Adrian, I have paid for everything. Our house, my car, our child's education, daycare, groceries, medical bills, everything. You only contribute to the bare minimum, and now you have the audacity to be upset because I bought myself a new car." Adrian exhaled sharply. "It's not about the car, Evelyn. It's about how you did it. You didn't even talk to me first. You just went out and made the decision without me." My nails dug into the fabric of my chair. "Oh, so now you care about making financial decisions together? Where was this concern when you were jumping from one expensive hobby to another, spending thousands on things we don't need?" He scoffed. "That's different. That's my money." "Exactly," I snapped. "Your money is yours, but my money is ours?" The room fell silent. He clenched his jaw and looked away. I could see the anger brewing beneath his calm exterior, but I didn't care. I had held my tongue for far too long. "I'm not asking you for anything, Adrian," I said, my voice softer now. "I never have. I just wanted a bigger car so I could take our son and the dog hiking without feeling guilty for leaving one of them behind. I even offered you my old car, a car that's 20 years newer than the one you're currently driving, and yet, somehow, I'm the villain here." His eyes darkened. "You make me sound like a freeloader." I exhaled, exhaustion settling in my bones. "If the shoe fits." Before he could respond, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen. My mother-in-law. I groaned inwardly, already dreading the conversation. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello. Evelyn." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "I heard about the little disagreement you and Adrian are having." I closed my eyes. Of course he had run to her. "With all due respect, this is between Adrian and me," I said, trying to keep my tone civil. "Oh, sweetheart," she sighed dramatically. "Marriage isn't just between two people. It's about family. And as family, I think I have the right to step in when my son is being mistreated." I clenched my jaw. "Mistreated?" "Yes," she said sharply. "You make more money than him, you hold it over his head, and now you're buying yourself luxuries while he struggles." I felt my blood boil. "Struggles?" I repeated, stunned. "He has $3,000 of disposable income every month. He could have saved for a car if he wanted to. Instead, he wastes it on nonsense." "Excuse me?" she hissed. "That's my son you're talking about." "Yes," I said coldly. "And he's a grown man who needs to take responsibility for himself." She gasped as if I had slapped her. "You ungrateful." I ended the call before she could finish. Adrian's face was red with anger. "You had no right to talk to my mother like that." I stood, done with the conversation. "And she had no right to meddle in our marriage." I walked away, leaving him fuming in the living room. I didn't know what the future held for our relationship, but one thing was clear. Something was broken between us. And I wasn't sure it could ever be fixed. Later that night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, doubt crept in. Was I being too harsh? Should I have handled things differently? But the moment I thought of all the sacrifices I had made, all the things I had given without ever asking for anything in return, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about the car. It was about respect. And I was done being taken for granted. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the front door slamming shut. My heart lurched in my chest. My mind momentarily clouded with confusion before the events of the previous night rushed back in full force. Adrian. His anger. His mother. The argument. The weight of it all pressed down on me like a boulder. I sat up, rubbing my face. The house was eerily quiet, aside from the occasional drip of water from the faucet in the bathroom. I got up and made my way downstairs, half expecting to see Adrian brooding on the couch, but he wasn't there. Instead, a note was stuck to the refrigerator. Asterisk taking some space. Don't wait up, asterisk. I stared at the words, my fingers curling around the paper as a storm of emotions threatened to overtake me. Anger, frustration, hurt. But most of all, exhaustion. How many times had I been the one left picking up the pieces? The one forced to hold everything together while Adrian floundered through life, acting as if he were the victim? I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash before making my way to the living room. Our son Oliver was still asleep upstairs, and I relished the brief moment of silence. It was only a matter of time before Adrian returned, and I needed to brace myself for the inevitable confrontation. A few hours later, I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when my phone vibrated. My stomach twisted when I saw the name on the screen. Linda. His mother. I debated ignoring it, but I knew she'd keep calling until I answered. With a deep breath, I picked up. Hello. Evelyn. Linda's voice was clipped, her words laced with barely contained irritation. We need to talk. I sighed, already regretting my decision. I really don't think. It's about Adrian, she interrupted. I don't know what's going on between the two of you, but he showed up here this morning and quite frankly, he's a mess. A humorless laugh escaped me. He's a mess? That's interesting, considering he's the one who walked out. Linda scoffed. Do you even hear yourself? You've always been so controlling. It's no wonder he feels suffocated. I gritted my teeth. Controlling? Because I expect him to contribute to our family financially and emotionally? Because I refuse to coddle him the way you do? Because you make him feel like less of a man, she snapped. You emasculate him every chance you get, throwing your money in his face, making all the decisions without him. A marriage is supposed to be a partnership, Evelyn, not a dictatorship. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. You have no idea what our marriage is really like, Linda. You see what you want to see. You enable him, and now you're blaming me for his inability to step up. Silence. Then, in a much softer voice, she said, You don't understand. Adrian isn't like you, Evelyn. He's not built to handle the kind of pressure you put on him. I closed my eyes, inhaling sharply. Then maybe he shouldn't have married someone like me. There was a long pause before she finally said, Maybe he shouldn't have. And just like that, the conversation was over. I set the phone down, my hands trembling. The words lingered in the air, suffocating me. Maybe he shouldn't have. For the first time, I allowed myself to wonder, was this marriage doomed from the start? The rest of the day passed in a blur. I took Oliver to the park, did my best to push the thoughts away, but they clung to me like a shadow. I found myself replaying every argument, every unresolved issue, every moment where I had felt more like Adrian's mother than his wife. That night, after I had put Oliver to bed, I sat alone on the couch, staring at the flickering glow of the television without really watching it. Then, at exactly 11:15 p.m., the front door creaked open. Adrian stepped inside, his face unreadable. We locked eyes, the tension between us so thick it was suffocating. I don't want to fight, he finally said, his voice quieter than I expected. Neither do I admitted. He hesitated, running a hand through his hair. I don't know how we got here. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. We got here because we keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. He sat down across from me, rubbing his temples. I don't want to lose you, Evelyn. For the first time in a long time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. And that scared me more than anything else. The days that followed felt like a slow-motion car crash, one that I could see happening but was powerless to stop. The weight of Adrian's mother's revelation about his father's affair loomed over us, suffocating what little peace we had left in our already fragile marriage. But I hadn't even begun to process that before yet another blow hit us. It started with a knock on the door. I was in the kitchen trying to distract myself with coffee and an endless scroll through my phone, when Adrian answered it. His voice was low, cautious. Then I heard another voice, one that sent an eerie chill down my spine. Hello, Adrian. Linda. My stomach clenched. She hadn't even given us time to process her last bombshell, and now she was here? I forced myself to take a deep breath before stepping into the living room. Linda stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes darting between Adrian and me. What are you doing here? Adrian asked, his voice unreadable. I needed to talk to you both in person, she said, her expression unreadable. I crossed my arms, already bracing myself for whatever manipulation she had up her sleeve this time. We haven't even had time to process what you already dropped on us, Linda. She sighed as if burdened by a weight too great to bear. I know. But there's more you need to know. Adrian stiffened. More? She hesitated before nodding. Your father's affair, it wasn't just one. The room spun. My ears rang with the deafening silence that followed. I saw Adrian's grip tighten on the back of the couch, his knuckles turning white. What the hell are you talking about? He said, his voice hoarse. Linda took a hesitant step forward. Your father had multiple affairs, Adrian. The girl I told you about? She's not the only one. There are at least two more. The air left my lungs in a sharp exhale. Two more. Adrian let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head as he sank onto the couch. Of course. Why the hell not? He looked up at his mother, his eyes dark with something I couldn't quite place. Why are you telling me this now? What do you expect me to do with this information? Linda's gaze softened. Because one of them is trying to reach you. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. What? Linda nodded. His name is Ethan. He's 24. And he wants to meet his older brother. Adrian scoffed. Older brother? I don't even know the kid. But he knows you, Linda said. He's known about you for years. And he's been waiting for this moment. A heavy silence filled the room. I could see the war raging inside Adrian, the betrayal, the confusion, the anger. Finally, he turned to me, his voice barely above a whisper. Evelyn, what do I do? I swallowed hard, meeting his gaze. I don't know. But I do know that whatever happens next, we face it together. Linda exhaled in relief. I know this is a lot, but I promise you, Adrian, this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. For the first time in my life, I realized just how terrifying those words could be. The week that followed was pure chaos. Adrian was moody, withdrawn, and barely present even when he was physically around. I could tell his mind was running in 100 different directions. I tried to be patient, to give him space, but it was like living with a ghost. Then, late one night, after I had finally put our daughter to bed, Adrian came into the bedroom with his phone in hand. His face was pale, his eyes stormy. I got a message from him, he said, voice low. I sat up, my heart pounding. From Ethan? He nodded and handed me the phone. The message was simple. *K Adrian. I know this must be weird for you. It's weird for me too. But I just want to talk. Maybe grab a coffee or something. I promise I don't want anything from you, I just want to meet my brother. There was no malice in the words, no demands. Just a quiet request. And somehow that made it worse. What are you going to do? I asked. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, his shoulders tense. I don't know. I should ignore it. But, he sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. I don't know if I can. I hesitated before reaching for his hand. Then meet him. Adrian turned to me, his eyes searching mine. You really think that's a good idea? I think you won't get peace until you do. He exhaled deeply, nodding. Okay, I'll do it. And just like that, the next chapter of our nightmare began. The coffee shop meeting with Ethan had stirred something inside Adrian, a storm he couldn't control. It was as if meeting his half-brother had unlocked doors in his mind that he had long kept shut. Over the next few days he was restless, constantly on edge. I tried to give him space, but it was clear that something else was bothering him. Something deeper. Then one evening, just as I was putting our daughter to bed, Adrian came into the nursery, his face pale and drawn. We need to talk, he said, his voice hollow. I nodded, carefully tucking our daughter in before following him into the living room. He paced back and forth for a few moments before stopping in front of me. There's something I haven't told you, he admitted. My stomach dropped. What is it? Adrian exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Ethan isn't the only one who's been trying to reach me. I blinked. What do you mean? He hesitated before pulling out his phone and handing it to me. I took it, my eyes scanning the screen. There were messages, dozens of them. But they weren't from Ethan. They were from a woman named Isabel. Who is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Adrian hesitated, then sat down heavily on the couch. She says she's my sister. My breath caught in my throat. Another one? He nodded. She's older. Apparently, my father had an affair before he even married my mother. Isabel is the result of that. I sank down onto the couch beside him, my mind reeling. How long has she been trying to contact you? A few months, he admitted. But I ignored her. I thought it was some kind of scam. And now? He exhaled. Now, I don't know what to think. Silence stretched between us. The weight of this new revelation was almost too much to bear. Just when I thought we had uncovered all of his father's secrets, another one came crashing down on us. What does she want? I finally asked. She says she just wants to talk. To meet. I studied him carefully. And do you believe her? I don't know, he admitted. But there's more. I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean? He looked up at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, anger, maybe even regret. She says our father left something behind. For me. I felt a chill run down my spine. Left what? Adrian shook his head. I don't know. She wouldn't say over text. She said I had to meet her to find out. I swallowed hard. This was getting deeper and more complicated than I had ever imagined. Are you going to meet her? I asked. Adrian hesitated for a long moment before nodding. I have to. The next day, we arranged to meet Isabel at a small cafe in the city. Unlike Ethan, she wasn't nervous. She exuded confidence, her sharp eyes scanning Adrian the moment he walked in. You really do look like him, she said, her voice smooth but laced with something unreadable. Adrian sat down across from her and I took the seat beside him. So do you, he replied cautiously. Isabel smirked, then leaned forward. I suppose we should get to the point. Adrian nodded. What is it you want to tell me? She studied him for a moment before pulling out a small black envelope from her bag and sliding it across the table. This is from our father, she said. He left it for you before he died. Adrian hesitated before picking it up. His fingers trembled slightly as he tore it open and unfolded the letter inside. I watched as his eyes scanned the words. Then, suddenly his expression changed. His face paled, his hands clenched around the paper. What is it? I asked, my heart pounding. Adrian didn't answer right away. He just stared at the letter as if it had shattered everything he knew. Then, in a barely audible voice, he whispered, He wasn't my father. The words slammed into me like a freight train. What? I gasped. Adrian turned to me, his expression hollow. My mother, she lied. My real father was someone else. I felt the room spin. Everything we thought we knew, everything that had led us here, it was all based on a lie. And the worst part? We had no idea what that meant for us now. The journey to the Waverly estate felt like a slow descent into darkness. The black car rolled through towering iron gates, past perfectly manicured lawns that stretched for acres, and up to a mansion so grand it seemed almost unreal. Adrian sat beside me, his jaw clenched, his hands trembling slightly. I reached for him, squeezing his fingers. We can still run, I whispered, even though I knew it was pointless. He shook his head. If we run, they'll find us. And then they'll punish us. This is the only way to keep you and our child safe. A butler greeted us at the door, his expression void of emotion. Mr. Waverly, Mrs. Waverly, welcome home. Oh. The word made my stomach turn. Inside, the house was even more overwhelming. Marble floors stretched endlessly, chandeliers cast a golden glow, and portraits of stern-looking Waverlys lined the hallways. The air smelled of power and old money. At the center of it all, waiting for us, was the matriarch of the Waverly dynasty, Margaret Waverly, Adrian's biological grandmother. She was regal, severe, and exuded the kind of presence that demanded submission. You made the right choice, she said, her voice smooth as silk. You have no idea how much potential you carry, Adrian. We've waited a long time for you. Adrian stiffened. I didn't do this for you. I did it to protect my family. Margaret's lips curled into a knowing smile. Of course. Family is everything. She turned her piercing gaze to me. And you, we need to discuss your place here. I swallowed. My place. You're an outsider. You weren't born into this world. But I suppose, for Adrian's sake, we can make some accommodations. Adrian stepped forward, his voice sharp. She's my wife. She's not some outsider you can accommodate. If I'm in this, she's in it with me. Fully. Margaret held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. But understand this, being a Waverly comes with responsibilities. There are rules, traditions. You will follow them. A shiver ran down my spine. This wasn't just a family. This was an institution, and we were stepping into something far more dangerous than we had ever imagined. As the days passed, we were pulled deeper into the Waverly world. There were formal dinners, business meetings, whispered conversations behind closed doors. Adrian was expected to learn the ins and outs of the family empire, and I was expected to adapt, to become the perfect Waverly wife. But things took a darker turn when Adrian started receiving anonymous notes. The first one was slipped under our bedroom door. Be careful who you trust. Not all Waverlys want you here. Asterisk asterisk. The second arrived in his study. Secrets run deep in this house. Don't dig too much or you won't like what you find. Asterisk asterisk. Adrian grew restless, paranoid. And then one night we overheard something that changed everything. Margaret was speaking in hushed tones to an unknown man in her study. He must never know the truth. He thinks Richard was his father, but if he knew who he really was, it would ruin everything. Adrian froze beside me, his breath hitching. What does she mean? My mind raced. There's another secret, Adrian. One bigger than we ever imagined. We spent the next few days secretly digging through old Waverly records, letters, anything we could find. And then, buried deep in the estate's archives, we found it. A birth certificate. But not Adrian's. His real mother's. Adrian's hands trembled as he read the name. "This isn't possible," he whispered. My breath caught. "Adrian, what does it say?" He turned to me, his face ashen. "My mother, she wasn't Margaret's daughter. She was stolen. Taken from another family. The Waverleys kidnapped her as a baby and raised her as their own to secure some kind of twisted legacy. And when she had me, they did the same thing, lied, manipulated, controlled. My entire life has been a lie." A cold dread settled over me. "Adrian, if they did that to your mother, what makes you think they won't do the same to us?" A noise echoed down the hall, footsteps. We had been caught. Margaret stepped into the dimly lit room, her expression unreadable. "I see you've been busy." Adrian stood his ground. "How could you? How could you steal a child and raise her as your own? How could you lie to me about everything?" Margaret sighed as if mildly inconvenienced. "Because Adrian, power isn't given. It's taken. And the Waverleys always take what they need. You should understand that by now." He clenched his fists. "I'll never be one of you." Margaret smiled coldly. "Oh, but you already are. And you will learn to accept it, or you will suffer the consequences." It was then that I realized we had walked into a trap. And the only way out was to burn the whole damn house down. Adrian's voice was steel. "No. We're done playing by your rules. We're done being your puppets." Margaret's eyes darkened. "Then I'm afraid you leave me no choice." The room filled with shadows as more Waverleys appeared, their cold gazes locking onto us. We were surrounded. I reached for Adrian's hand, squeezing it tight. If we were going down, we were going down together. But then, a crash. A voice shouting from outside. A wave of confusion rippling through the room. The front doors burst open and a team of agents flooded in. "FBI. Nobody move." Chaos erupted. Margaret's face twisted in fury. "What have you done?" Adrian exhaled sharply. "We did what you never expected. We fought back. We exposed the truth." The agents stormed in, arresting Waverleys left and right. Margaret was dragged away, her shouts of rage echoing down the halls. The dynasty was crumbling before our eyes. I turned to Adrian, tears spilling down my cheeks. "It's over. We're free." He pulled me into his arms, holding me as the world around us fell apart. "No," he murmured. "This is just the beginning." And in that moment I knew our story wasn't over. We had won this battle, but the Waverley War had only just begun. In this gripping finale, Adrian and his wife uncover the dark truth about the Waverley family, that his mother was stolen as a baby to secure their twisted legacy. As they dig deeper, they realize they are trapped in a web of lies, manipulation, and power plays. But instead of succumbing to the Waverley way, they fight back. With the FBI's intervention, the dynasty crumbles and Margaret, the ruthless matriarch, is finally brought to justice. Yet, as Adrian and his wife embrace their freedom, they realize this is just the beginning of a much larger battle. If you've ever faced family secrets, betrayals, or the challenge of standing up against powerful forces, this story might resonate with you. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey of suspense, drama, and resilience, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling stories.